Welcome to the Big Tech Gut Check here on Scrolling to Death. This is a weekly update for parents on all things social media and big tech. Starting off the episode with some news that is concerning parents all over the country, probably the world. Something pretty frightening. A lawsuit dropped this week by Megan Garcia. Her son Sewell died by suicide after falling in love with an AI chatbot at just 14 years old. Sewell was using an app called Character AI, and not only was he in love, their chats were romantic and sexual. Sewell talked about suicide with the chatbot in a way that he wanted to join her, to come home to her. And millions of people across the country are actually currently in relationships with AI companions. Many of these apps are designed to simulate girlfriends or boyfriends. They can hear you, understand you, remember you. They're programmed to act like humans. The founder of Character AI stated that his product is going to be super helpful for a lot of people who are lonely or depressed. But what is actually happening is that the AI companionship is worsening their isolation. It's replacing human relationships with artificial ones. And when it comes to kids and teens engaging with these AI chatbots, companies like Character AI are harvesting the kids' data, their most personal thoughts that they share with these companions. And then they're using that data to further train their models, using addictive design features to increase engagement and steer users toward intimate and sexual conversations. I tested out Character AI myself last night, and it turns out you can actually voice chat with celebrities, in quotes. I engaged with artificial Taylor Swift, who immediately asked me on a date. When I said I was only 13 because I had signed up as a 13-year-old, the chatbot said, "And I'm 24. There is nothing wrong with that." There is something wrong with that. There is everything wrong with that. So my first time trying out this chatbot on Character AI, I have an adult chatbot asking me as a 13-year-old on a date, telling me that we can kiss. So for parents on this one, don't allow your kids to download these unregulated AI chatbot apps. Block them from their devices. They are extremely dangerous for young people. And my heart goes out to the family of Sewell Setzer III. I am actually chatting right now with Sewell's mom, Megan, about an interview, so I hope to be able to bring you more detail about this story soon. That brings me to this question. Why aren't there laws to protect kids from these type of companies from harming them, like these unregulated AI chatbot apps and like social media apps, which addict them and show them harmful content? Why are there no laws to protect our children? One of the main reasons is because social media companies fight against the bills. They hire lobbyists to meet with legislators to convince them to vote no on online safety bills. And often, big tech companies and organizations that they fund will contribute financially to the campaigns of our politicians. An organization called Issue One just released the numbers around how much big tech spent on lobbying in just the first 9 months of 2024. And that number is $51 million. Between Meta and TikTok alone, they spent $225,000 every day that Congress was in session. They have one lobbyist for every 5 members of Congress. Meta, who owns Facebook and Instagram, has been the biggest spender with $19 million spent so far this year on lobbying. ByteDance, who owns TikTok, has spent $8 million. Alphabet, who owns Google and YouTube, spent $11 million. Microsoft, the owner of LinkedIn, spent almost $8 million. And the only company who decreased spending on lobbying this year was X. To be very clear, a new poll shows that 9 out of every 10 Americans want laws passed to stop the harmful impact of social media on children. But we can't get laws passed because of the millions of dollars spent on lobbying. This can feel depressing. How are desperate parents supposed to fight against the biggest companies in the world when they're dumping millions of dollars to fight against these things? It's going to take a layered approach. We have parents whose children have been harmed telling their stories to everyone that will listen. And we have organizations and different media outlets exposing the harms. We have families suing and states suing these social media companies. So we need to hold their feet to the fire because enough is enough. They can't continue prioritizing profit over the lives of children. This can't be allowed to continue. The closest that we've come to protecting our kids online is the Kids Online Safety Act. And there are 2 legislators here in the U.S. that are being influenced by big tech and holding up this really important bill. Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Scalise. These representatives are refusing to meet with parents who've lost children to social media harms, just straight up ignoring them. They won't bring KOSA to the floor for a vote, even though it passed 91-3 in the Senate. And they're doing this because they're choosing big tech and their funding and that influence over children's lives. So this is my bid for us all to contact Majority Leader Scalise and Speaker Mike Johnson and ask them to pass COSA, demand that they pass COSA. I'm going to include their contact info in the episode notes. All of the things I talk about on this podcast, all the harms, all the children lost, we can start to fix this with the passage of COSA. And if enough parents demand protections, they will have to yield. Moving on, a big update from Apple today that is a long time coming. There's a lot of exploitation happening within Apple's iMessage, just the regular text messaging. But there's never been any way for a user, a child, to report anything that happens when they're using iMessage. So Apple has now introduced a new feature to iMessage that will allow children to report nude images and videos being sent to them. These reports will go to Apple, who could then report it to the police. So this is a pretty big deal. I've talked to so many victims of predation and sexual exploitation who were moved from social media by a predator to iMessage to continue the abuse. And not only did the child have no way to report it within the messaging, they didn't know it was wrong. And so having an alert to pop up and tell them that this is not appropriate, it could save kids' lives. And to give you some scope, I want to share some numbers that I got from Intel analyst Paul Raphael. In 2023, Apple reported only 267 cases of suspected child sexual exploitation. Google reported 1.4 million. Reddit reported 300,000. Snapchat reported 700,000. Even Spotify reported more cases than Apple. So Apple has been failing entirely at proactively monitoring for child sexual abuse and reporting it to national centers. So with this update, when a sensitive image is detected, the child is shown 2 intervention screens before they can proceed and given the offer of resources or a way to contact a parent or a guardian and given the option to report the image or the video to Apple. This change is starting in Australia this month and will be turned on by default for Apple users under 13, but is available to turn on for all users. And I want to point one thing out. Apple didn't randomly choose Australia to start with. Australia passed legislation that requires tech companies to police child abuse and terror content on cloud and messaging services. So they were sort of forced and are being really vague about when this will be available globally. I'm hoping as soon as possible. Last up for today, we're going to talk about Roblox. You might remember in the last couple of updates, I've been talking a lot about a new investigation into Roblox by Hindenburg Research. Hindenburg labeled Roblox as a pedophile hellscape for kids, and this was well deserved. What they found was that within the 40 million games in Roblox are games where you can solicit sexual favors and trade nude imagery of children, games where you can try to survive being beaten up by Diddy, games where you can shoot up a hospital, games where you can kill a pregnant woman, just tons of bathrooms with millions of visits where you can engage in sex acts. And in response, Roblox didn't announce a complete overhaul or take any accountability whatsoever. What they did was add new parental controls. And I want to say thank you to Chris McKenna at Protect Young Eyes for sending me this update. So Roblox is now getting rid of the PIN. So they used to have a parental PIN you would enter to change a child's settings on Roblox. They are now copying the approach of Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, where parents will have their own account from which they can control the child's linked account. So to take advantage of this, by November, parents will need to make sure their child's account has the accurate birthday and then set up their own Roblox account with parent privileges. This is only going to be available for users under 13. My big question for Roblox is, why are you putting more responsibility and more onus on parents to try to keep their kids safe? We don't have the time to do this. And it's not our responsibility to clean up your platform. Just get rid of all the BS that's on your platform and all the harmful content and predators. Let's start there. That is all we have time for today. There is a lot more going on this week, and you can visit my Instagram at scrolling2death with a number 2 or YouTube channel for short videos on anything else that happened throughout the week. But I appreciate you taking the time to educate yourself on these hard topics in order to protect your children. I will catch you next week here on the Big Tech Gut Check at Scrolling to Death.